Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Chief Executive London and Partners Laura Citron, Chief Executive Tourism Ireland Niall Gibbons, and Secretary of State for Tourism Government of Portugal Mendes Godinho in discussion with Skift Europe editor Patrick White.
Hello everybody. So just to start off and taking on from that last session, we've just heard about tourism's invisible burden and the problems it can cause in destinations. So in the past, maybe it was about driving volumes and getting more and more people to come and visit your cities or countries. But now destinations are having to be more thoughtful in terms of how they manage and market their countries. So I'm delighted to have three leaders from across Europe here to talk about the challenges and opportunities in tourism. Laura, Anna and Niall, thanks so much for being here. So first off, I'd like to remind you all that you can submit your questions. We'll come to those at the end on Slido. And firstly, I want to start off with you, Laura, as we're in London and you're wearing the Skift shoes. You got the memo, I didn't. So London and Partners is the Mayor's promotional agency for promoting London. And in your most recent business plan, you talked about making tourism work for Londoners, which kind of jumps on what we talked about before about the invisible burden of tourism and how it needs to work for locals better. Can you maybe talk a bit about that and why that change in approach is kind of filtered through to you guys?
Sure, thank you for inviting me. Thank you for bringing the matching armchairs. It's great to see everyone here in London. London and Partners promotes tourism to London, but we're also the inward investment, export and higher education agency for London. So a DMO and an economic development agency combined, and that's just probably useful context for the way we think about tourism. So when we talk about responsible tourism and tourism that benefits London, we're thinking really about three things, and that's beyond, to Sally's point earlier, the very significant economic benefit of tourism to London, which is very significant. The first is around tourism that supports diverse culture that Londoners can enjoy. So London has a phenomenal range of cultural attractions, and a lot of that is supported by tourism. So we want tourists to be supporting grassroots music, a diverse range of nightlife, lots of activity in the outer boroughs, not just the centre, that residents can also enjoy. The second area is about managing capacity. So we have an ambition to grow tourism in London, but we're very conscious of the over-tourism issues in other European cities. So for us, it's really important to be managing capacity. So that's thinking about how tourists are using the city, time of day, time of year, and geographic dispersal. So trying to mitigate the potential harms. And then in the longer term view, we're thinking about how tourism benefits London over the long term, because we see tourism as a gateway to a lifelong relationship with the city. Many people will experience London for the first time as a tourist, probably as a young person, and they will then come back as a student, come back as a highly skilled worker, come back as a client, come back as an investor. So we want to be using tourism to start that lifelong relationship with London that will benefit us over the whole life cycle of our tourists. And so what we're doing currently with our strategy is really targeting those tourists who will bring the biggest benefit to London. So that's those who we know are most likely to enjoy a diverse range of culture, to use the city at night, to explore beyond the top 10 attractions. And that happens to be a very similar group to those who are most likely to have a meaningful lifelong relationship with the city.
That's really interesting, and I guess it's you've got a different problem or opportunity in Ireland, Niall, in terms of tourism and spreading the benefits across not just the most visited sites, Dublin, and other places. Is that something that you've concentrated on in the last couple of years, moving and making sure people see more of the non-traditional sites in Ireland, spreading the benefit of tourism outside of the cities and major areas?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me along here today. Tourism Ireland are the agency that promotes the island of Ireland, north and south, arising from our peace agreement 20 years ago. And it's a really important industry. And to put it in perspective, the issues that we're grappling with now didn't just happen in the last couple of years. Tourism in Ireland has been the earliest guide I have in my office from 230 years ago. So it's a business we've been in for a long time. I think we're seeing pronounced issues at the moment, given the numbers of people that are travelling, and it's something that's going to be with us for a long time to come. From our perspective, we went down the path of market diversification about 6 years ago. Great Britain used to be our biggest market, accounting 40% of volume, but we pushed the debate into the value area. We're looking to see and invite people to come from areas that stay longer, spend more perhaps than high volume business. We're looking as well to develop concepts in Ireland, for example, like the Wild Atlantic Way, which is on the west coast of Ireland. It's about getting communities engaged at local level involved in tourism. A lot of these are 20,000 small and medium-sized enterprises, mom and pop type businesses, who will not take the risk on maybe extending the season because they're not too sure if the business is going to come. But if these people aren't engaged at local level, this is where the debate with over-tourism will end up in conflict. So that's something that's very important for us. I think the other delivery that tourism has brought to Ireland is the delivery of the peace process. So Northern Ireland, which engaged in 30 years of conflict, has now seen 21 years of peace, and people who are under the age of 21 have never known that conflict, and many people who had been involved in conflict before are now engaged in tourism as tour guides. So there's plenty of capacity to spread the season. The challenge that we have in Ireland in particular is that 80% of all people arriving in come into Dublin, and we can't tell people where to go. We have to make it as attractive and interesting as we possibly can. But it's an industry that I think can give amazing economic benefits, and we have to continue to communicate that message at home to keep people engaged in the industry.
And Anna, you're in government obviously, so you have that tension of tourism as an industry, but you have the pressures from locals. And people in the country, they vote in elections. So are you seeing any of that kind of that tension between tourists and locals spill over in Portugal, or is it something that people are still room to grow?
First of all, people recognize in Portugal the importance that tourism has. That tourism in Portugal is a case study, I would say, an international case study, how tourism can actually change a way that a country lives. We went through a very tough crisis with the IMF intervention, and just to give you an example, in 2014 we had almost 17% of an unemployment rate. Right now we have 6%. And tourism was a very important instrument to change the way the country was attracting not only visitors, but also investors, new residents, new students. So tourism has been a very helpful instrument to change the way people look at Portugal. Portugal is now being discovered by everyone. We know we have a very important jewel, and I would say the richness that we have is much due first to the way that people host hospitality, the way they host tourism. And this shows also the way people understand how tourism is so important for Portugal. So our biggest drive is first to guarantee that the way we see Portugal maintains, even for the population, this welcoming spirit. That's why we built with the private sector a long strategy to address concrete goals. And one of those goals is to guarantee that tourism plays its role in terms of social sustainability. We have concrete goals. We identify that we want that at least 90% of the population is satisfied with the impact that tourism has in the country. But of course, this is not words. We have to act. If we don't act fast, we are part of the past. And that, I think, is the main role that even public bodies have. We must be change makers in our countries. We must foster, we must pull change and address the problems. We cannot hide our head in the sand and just pretend it's not happening. We know there's this discussion about over-tourism. We know that our main asset is authenticity in Portugal. That's what people love about Portugal, about tradition, about the way they are well received, about the way they feel at home. And so what we did is that we identified the challenges. We created special concrete programs to address these challenges. We involved young people to answer our challenges. We put young people answering our needs. And we also identified a whole of indicators, measurable indicators, to measure what tourism is doing in the country. This is available online. We just launched it, where everyone can see the indicators and how we are coping.
So you're being quite transparent and making sure people...
Transparent. Let's be transparent. Let's act when we have to act. Let's create the programs, the incentives, the financial support that is needed to guarantee, for example, if we want and we need to use instruments to develop the rural areas, we have to foster it. We cannot wait that it happens alone. It won't happen alone. We have to guarantee that we have infrastructure. We have to guarantee that people can reach there. There's mobility. We have to guarantee that local communities have the financial resources to foster, to begin. Sometimes, if we don't give this support, for example, traditional art craftships will disappear. So they have to be supported at the local level, but with financial support. What we created a special program just dedicated to the rural areas, where we put 100 million euros from our budget. It's an option, of course, it's an option. And in 3 years, we had 600 local products developed by local communities. And these are the things that now are in the mindset of everyone that is discovering new experiences that they will have nowhere else. We have a mindset. Portugal is an inclusive country and an exclusive country. You find things there that you won't have, that you won't find any other place. But for that, you have to help local communities to maintain their authenticity, their local products. And again, at the same time, put digital in everything you do.
So it's about being smarter. So I mean,
smart in every way.
To your point, so how do you measure? This is, I guess, I'll ask this to Laura now. How do you measure the impact of tourism? How do you measure and how do you quantify it? Are you doing it? But Sally kind of talked about that, being smarter in terms of measuring tourism, whether it's financial or whatever. Have you got better tools to do that now than maybe you had in the past?
Better, but still not perfect, and Sally's given us a big to-do list.
Niall, do you think, are you better at
I think better, but I think the better is because we moved away from the volume debate. I mean, Ireland is a country with a population of 6.5 million people that welcomes 11.5 million visitors. So that's a big ratio, so to speak. But, you know, we need to move to the value debate. But there has to be a long-term debate. I mean, this is not something we just do, and then another recession comes along, which tends to happen, and then sustainability goes off the agenda. So I think if you want to talk about sustainability and authenticity, it has to be a longer-term debate. I think she's right about having the right skills in the industry to measure over the longer term.
I spoke to, I interviewed somebody from Amsterdam Marketing a couple of years ago, and he said his job was no longer marketing Amsterdam, it was managing Amsterdam. So, and all three of you represent destinations that are already wildly popular with tourists. You know, people come to London, Ireland, Portugal all the time. So are marketing campaigns, are they kind of, for your destinations, almost pointless because people come anyway? Is it about managing demand and making sure it fulfills it hits certain points? Any of you? Niall?
I think it would be a mistake to think that people are going to come anyway. I mean, what we keep on saying to our industry, who are very well integrated with, is the clock goes back to zero on the 1st of January and we have to do it all again. And a country like Ireland is on the periphery of Europe. It depends heavily on air access links and is very volatile in terms of consumer confidence and just the economy in general. So I think it's about having a balanced portfolio of markets, about reminding the industry that, you know, we all have a responsible role to play in this industry. It has the capacity to generate an awful lot of well-being around our society, which we can measure in terms of outputs. But, you know, in terms of our campaigns, you know, we got to refresh it all the time. I mean, we don't do an awful lot of marketing in Dublin because the access is so good. But there's a whole world outside of our capital cities that's waiting to be discovered. And we have to continue to renew those communities that don't always see the economic benefits that people in the cities do. And that's where conflict can arise.
Laura, is it marketing or is it managing or is it both?
It's marketing, but for us it's very much about changing the makeup of the demand. So we market almost exclusively to first-time visitors in long-haul markets who are young and culturally curious because they have the behaviours that we know are most beneficial for Londoners. So yes, we're absolutely marketing, but I'd say in a very targeted way.
It's not quite the same for you, Anna, but what's your view on this?
I would say that if you have a drive in sustainability, that becomes your biggest marketing instrument. Sustainability right now.
Do you think people care more about that?
I'm sure this is part of not only the future, this is the present. People are driven by the impact they do in the places they go, the way they feel, they change the places they go in a good manner. And I do think that when you think sustainability in all senses, social, environmental, economical, because even if you want to drive to economical sustainability, you have to guarantee that you have activity all year round, and even that doesn't fall from the sky. You have to work for it. So, but sustainability becomes the driver even of communication, the driver of action, of defining even the priorities in terms of training. For example, even our students in our schools right now in their curricula, sustainability is one of the major issues. And not only the students, the ones that are already in the market. That's one of the biggest challenges we have, to change the people that are in the market to this mindset of sustainability. We even launched a program called BEST. We consider ourselves the best, of course. But it's a program dedicated to entrepreneurs, but only to the traditional industry, the hotel industry, to foster change. One of our goals is to guarantee that at least 90% of the hotel industry in 2027 is driven and has efficient systems in terms of waste production, water consumption, etc.
How do you do that? Can you force them to do it, or as the government, I guess you can do, but how do you can just say you can ask them to do it, but do they do it?
We have, I would say, 3 instruments. Financial instruments, so we created a credit line to help with a non-reimbursable part dedicated to sustainable environment and efficient systems. First, financial. Second, through regulatory rules. So what we are doing now, and even with the Hotel Association, we are changing the system of classification of hotels, introducing in the system for the first time, and I think we will be the first ones to do this, the environmental issue. It will have all the chapter dedicated to environmental commitment in the hotel system classification. So stars will also depend on the commitment to environmental. And so I told you regulatory and financial, and through sharing examples. Because one of the challenges also that we have is that sometimes the routine doesn't help us stop and to understand what we have to change even in these sustainability issues. So what we feel is that we have to put in contact new technologies and the traditional hotel facilities. Because sometimes they don't even know what new solutions they can implement. So you have to, and I do believe in this role of the public bodies, you have to be, again, the change maker, to put them in contact with these new technologies, with startups, for example. We launched a program dedicated to startups, and we identify the challenges that we have in our strategy, and one of them, of course, it's about the environmental goals that we have. We had 33 indicators in terms of sustainability, and we told the startups, well, we will support your accelerator programs, but you have to develop solutions that answer our needs, our problems. Again, put young people solving your problems quickly, or else you'll be part of the past. And what was so interesting, I can give you an example of one startup that, answering our needs, developed, I'm going to do some promotion campaign for them, which they need.
I'll give you a little bit of time to do that.
Just to give you an example, it's a startup that came to Portugal. They are from another country. They chose Portugal to develop their business, again, because they were driven by this startup program that we created. And they created an app where the tourist, it's an app that is associated with the hotel chain, the tourist pays less in the hotel if he consumes less water. So these are solutions that they are good for everyone.
You and Sally should talk afterwards about
okay.
that. Can I move on to, we've got a Megatrends magazine here, and one of the trends in that was under-tourism as a phenomenon. So we've talked a lot about over-tourism over the years, and that's a really big issue in loads of places. But under-tourism, not necessarily as a thing, but as a marketing tool to get people to go and see places which maybe they wouldn't go before. Is this something that you would use in terms of London, and maybe not, maybe the edge of the city, maybe different places to visit? Under-tourism, is that a thing? Could you use that as a marketing tool, do you think?
We wouldn't necessarily call it under-tourism, but there are definitely bits of London that are underexplored by tourists that are really exciting, have authentic experiences that tourists would love, but are just not on the radar. So we're doing a lot of work to try and promote those experiences. And partly what's come from the Mayor is an initiative called the London Borough of Culture, where one of the outer boroughs of London every year is a real focus for culture. So this year it's Waltham Forest, and there is amazing stuff happening all year in Waltham Forest.
I've never been to Waltham Forest.
Well, you should go to Waltham Forest.
That's terrible.
We'll fix you a trip to Waltham Forest. So promoting that, but absolutely there are undiscovered hidden gems even in London, for sure.
And I guess it's the same in Ireland, and that's why you've brought these campaigns, the Wild Atlantic Way, which has been phenomenally successful, but there's a couple of others as well, Ancient East and another one coming as well. Can you talk a bit about that and what the philosophy was behind that?
Well, the new campaign, Fill Your Heart with Ireland, is a national brand campaign around the globe in 23 different markets. And really, I suppose what it's saying is that there are a lot of hidden gems in Ireland that remain undiscovered. So the word under-tourism wouldn't get used. But if you draw a line, I suppose, from Dublin to Galway and look at the northern half of the island of Ireland, I mean, that's where there is an awful lot of underexplored areas and hidden gems. And those things that motivate people and inspire them about Ireland, the friendliness and warmth of the people, the landscape, food and drink, culture, they're there to be found in abundance. So that campaign is launched now. It's out across all main channels in all main markets. And supplementing that then are regional campaigns like the Wild Atlantic Way, where you can just get under the layer a little bit more, get in a little bit deeper, so to speak. And that's the campaign as well that at local level engages local communities as well to ensure that they're fully connected. So the message that's been delivered internationally is what's been felt when people get there on the ground.
And now I want to move on to talk about Brexit, which should have happened by now, but hasn't, and who knows if it will ever happen. We don't know. And all three of you, I guess, have probably seen it and have been planning for it in different ways. So Laura, I'll start with you. I mean, how has London and Partners been planning for it, and how has it affected your 2019 and going forward further than that?
So London actually saw a phenomenal 2018 on international visits, and 2019 is looking like a really strong year, particularly on long haul. There is some effects on European short haul, but actually our biggest markets are pretty strong. I think what we're doing over the longer term is really looking at our partnerships. So our biggest campaign at the moment is marketing London and Paris as a single destination for US millennials. Because we know that London and Paris are two of the top two bucket list destination cities, but US first-time visitors to London and Paris don't have a huge amount of annual leave. Transatlantic flights are expensive. You can get between London and Paris in 2 hours. So we're working with our equivalents in Paris, Paris Info, and we've done this joint campaign about one trip, two epic cities, and that's performing really well. We're seeing really strong uplift in consideration. So I think really thinking about how we're positioning London, but also how we're continuing to work closely with our European partners.
And Niall, Brexit for Tourism Ireland is even more serious, I guess, not just because of the number of visitors that come from Great Britain, but because of Tourism Ireland's position as the body which markets for the island of Ireland and the issues that we have with that in Northern Ireland and Republic. So how have you been planning for it, and what do you see in 2019?
I see there's only 2 minutes on the clock, so I'm not going to be able to cover this question. I'll be in the unique situation that 3/4 of my product is inside the European Union and 1/4 maybe outside. Look, I think the bottom line is that whatever form the UK leave the European Union in, people are still going to take their holidays. That's the message that we've been delivering to the industry at home, and we have to make sure that we send out a positive message that we're very much open for business. We want to make sure that Northern Ireland is on people's bucket list because it has been transformed by peace over the last 20 years. And I think that'll continue to be the case.
Some amazing investment there as well. The Giant's Causeway Visitor Centre there, and Titanic Belfast. Some really cool sites there. So it's
Yeah, well, if you want to see the peace process in the peace dividend that comes from it, 30 years ago, in the height of the conflict, 150,000 people went to the Giants Causeway. Last year it was 1.1 million.
Wow.
So there is the peace dividend at work. We cannot allow a situation where a border develops on the island of Ireland. That is just not going to work. And we've seen the results of that. And I think everyone's committed to it. And this is where, there's a phrase, tourism brings peace, peace brings tourism, and we have to continue to ensure that whatever we do, that we don't go backwards on the journey.
And I'll come to you quickly on before I go to some questions.
I have to talk about Brexit.
Quick,
Okay.
but on in terms of UK visitors, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah.
We did two things. First, we worked with the British tour operators to identify exactly what measures we had to implement to guarantee that our relation between tourists and Portugal became seamless. And we approved a special plan dedicated to guarantee that you will feel no difference. I think this was one of the key issues to show that we are so committed to the UK. It's a long life relationship that nothing will change. And it's so specific that even admits that you won't have problems with your pets. You won't have problems with your health insurance. So everything is guaranteed that everything stays the same. At the same time, we launched a campaign because we introduced a new word in our dictionary. We changed welcome to welcome. So no matter what happens with Brexit, Portugal will always welcome and will never leave the UK. That's our message. We will never leave the UK or the British tourists. Numbers. This year, January and February, till March, passengers from the UK increased to Portugal 12%. So this shows, I think, that this strong connection and also this message that we passed to the UK market that for us nothing would change, that did impact on people.
So
but of course, we have to guarantee that we maintain this close relationship and that we pass the message to the UK market that Portugal is always a very good market, a good value for money market.
So if it all goes badly wrong, I'm still welcome to come to Portugal. That's okay.
You're always welcome, and Portugal will never leave you.
It's good to know. Okay, so questions for everyone. So hotels are always an important reference point in each destination. How do you involve hotels in your destination marketing plan? Niall.
We have a marketing partnership group that is a consultation forum in developing our plan that goes to our board. Included in that are all the main industry representative groups, including the Irish Hotels Federation, Northern Ireland Hotels Federation. They're an essential part of the journey.
So very collaborative.
Absolutely.
Laura?
Absolutely.
We work with the major hotel groups who are our tourism partners and similar to now.
In Portugal, you have at the regional level, it's a private-public partnership. So the promotion, attracting new airlines, etc., is all done through associations that include public partners and the hotels at the regional level.
Okay, I'm going to move on to the Game of Thrones question. As a massive fan, I got up very early yesterday morning to watch the latest episode. And I also read an interview with you in the paper that HBO give you plot lines in advance. So do you know how it ends? No spoilers. But anyway, how have you used Game of Thrones to market Ireland? And I guess the wider question is, can you use TV shows and events to boost recognition of your destinations?
I think yes is the answer. It's a question really of how creative and innovative the team can be. With Game of Thrones, we moved very early in the relationship with HBO. It is filmed in other countries too, but we've got a license agreement to use the term Northern Ireland Games of Thrones territory. We've had some really innovative, creative campaigns around seasons 6, 7 and 8. And we have a legacy project next year, which 70% of all the sets of the 8 series are currently in Northern Ireland, and that'll be a Harry Potter.
Yeah, I was going to say it's going to be like a Harry Potter world, Game of Thrones world.
Yeah.
That's going to be amazing.
But what HBO did, for example, in our Door of Thrones campaign, there's a very famous scene called the King's Road, where there's 250-year-old trees there that blew down in the storm, a couple of them. We salvaged the trees and we made 10 doors out of them. But HBO gave the plot lines for the series in advance, so we were able to carve the story on the door. And we hung one in a pub in Northern Ireland as each episode aired. and that went out across social media along with
Very
HBO
cool.
and Tourism Ireland in advance. So that won's gold, silver and bronze at the Cannes Awards a couple of years ago. And we've had the Bayou Tapestry campaign last year. So the Game of Thrones tapestry modelled on Bayou is actually going over to the Bayou Museum this year to hang alongside the old Bayou Tapestry. And this year we launched our stained glass Glass of Thrones campaign. But what the campaign really is about as well is authenticity, the things that Northern Ireland was famous for in terms of its industrial heritage, in terms of wood, linen, glass, are recreated in this campaign. So it ties in well to, traditionally what the destination was renowned for. It's not just a gimmick,
And Laura, how have you used it? I guess the Olympics is not quite the same, but in terms of an event that raised London's profile, anything else in terms of TV shows or anything like that you've seen help aid London's awareness?
Yeah, TV and film tourism is really big for London. James Bond, Harry Potter, could go on, Sherlock Holmes. And particularly we're looking at what resonates with Chinese audiences, which are a big focus for us. But I think events are really powerful for London. So you mentioned the Olympics, but obviously that's a while ago. But this year we have the Cricket World Cup, we have Major League Baseball, we have NFL playing in London. So there are lots of really big global sports events, and we're really trying to use those as well to win new audiences. And
Anna, I know you've got Web Summit, I guess, is an event that comes to Lisbon in terms of bringing people over there. And anything else in terms of marketing?
Web Summit has been fantastic for us, and they've just committed to stay for 10 more years, which is great and shows the good experience they had with us. Portugal was completely out of the film industry 3 years ago, and there's a reason. We didn't have special incentives, we didn't have a plan to attract films. Again, we decided to position ourselves. We know the importance that can have, namely in showing different parts of the country that people don't know. And creating a dynamic in those areas. So we created a special program called Pick Portugal. We created in 2017 with a special cash rebate system. We created a system to guarantee that we give an answer in 20 days, which is like the best system in Europe. We studied all the ones that were going on, and I think we have the most competitive right now. Results. 20 international films that are being filmed in Portugal in 2018, and we'll have some premieres in Cannes for the first time with big movies shot in Portugal. So it does work. You just have to focus to identify why aren't you in the market? This is so easy to do, and then to adopt, implement fast, in a very effective way, the measures to guarantee that you become attractive to the film industry, and it's happening. At the same time, we created a special program to attract big events to Portugal, not only big events and medium events, even to the rural areas. And it's been amazing because it has helped to put clearly Portugal in the map. Again, people go for the event. Some of these people, the first time they go to Portugal is for that special event. That happened a lot with that Web Summit, for example. And look at what's happening now in terms of the tech vibe energy that's happening in Portugal. Because they go there, I always say you have to go to Portugal to taste it. You have to see it, you have to feel it to taste it, because you'll fall in love. Have you been to Portugal?
Yes, I think I have, a long time ago. I haven't been recently.
Oh,
so.
You have to go.
Okay, on that note, we're going to have to end it. We're out of time.
But the great thing about events is that you go there for the first time for the event, and then you get so in love that you go back, you decide to move there, to invest and to live.
We've lead the stage, unfortunately. Hannah, Niall, Laura, thank you very much for your time. Please give them a round of applause.